Hey, hello, hello, and welcome to my garden. My name is Darcy Daniels. I am creator of eGardenGo.com and a garden designer and avid gardener that lives and gardens in Portland, Oregon. We're in USDA Zone 8B, and I'm on a modest size, small city lot that is 50 feet by 100 feet. And what we're going to explore today is my backyard garden. So we're just going to pan around, look at it from lots of different angles, explore some beautiful plants, look at some nice combinations and vignettes, and give you a sense of how I've segmented it into different areas for people, places to relax and enjoy and be in the garden. Let me give you a lay of the land so you can kind of get a sense of how the layout goes. Over here, we have our house. We're a small little bungalow, and I have a detached studio, kind of right where you are sitting. That is a seating area that we enjoy, and that vantage point that you see is one that we enjoy throughout the summer months. This is just a really great shady retreat to, that we gravitate towards in the high summer. There's another little more intimate seating area just right over here. This path that I'm on continues and connects up to my front garden, and then there's another path on the south side. So this way is north, that way is south. In terms of light situation, it's very changeable. In high summer, there are blasts of sun that just come right through here that are pretty strong. Generally speaking, though, this side here is pretty shady because it's shaded by this tree and the house and whatnot. This area here can and used to be really sunny, but now not so much. So this is my living laboratory. This is where I play with plants. This is where I make planting combinations, and I want to share it with you today. So this is that back seating area, and you can see we're in the very far back part of the garden, and we're looking down the path that we had there and back towards the house, and we can see the other living seating area. We'll look at that in just a moment. I love the feeling of enclosure that these two small shrub-like trees provide. Now we've come off the deck and we're walking down that path. And as we continue along, we're going to pivot here in a moment. And at that point, you're going to be able to really see an example of these color connections that I've talked about in previous videos. The color connections of both foliage and flower. As we look down the path and look through the garden, your eye just floats from one to the other example of the pinks and the corals and the yellows and the blues, and each of them just kind of knitting together and just really leading your eye and then ultimately your body through the garden, but making this collector's garden kind of hang together and look cohesive. I haven't mentioned the date yet, I don't think. This is mid-April here. Most of this footage was shot on April 20th on a beautiful spring day. And there is tons going on, but so much more to come. We've got lots of beautiful foliage and flower happening now, but there's also just so many hints of what's to come next. That trellis there actually has 4 clematis vines that are going to start blooming here sometime soon. Behind the trellis is the small seating area. As we continue to pan, there's another room, and behind that, my studio. There's a dining area, and the sliding doors lead into our house. The next 15 minutes or so, I am going to be walking you around the garden and kind of just showing you some detailed close-up views of some of the plants, some of the vignettes, and just kind of like as if you were walking through the garden with me. But I'm not going to talk through the whole thing. I will try and do some plant identification here and there. But generally, I'm just going to let the garden kind of speak for itself. But periodically, I will try and identify some plants. There's just so many plants, I can't identify them all for you. So I'll just do what I think might be some of the standouts. For instance, this is Choisia.
right there. That's looking so great. A lot of these plants I'll also mention at this point. Many of these plants are on eGardenGo, and you can find descriptions and plant combination ideas there. I will also probably do a little bit of labeling on this video, do some kind of caption or titles over some of the plants that I pause on for any length of time, just to do my best to try and tell you what you might be looking at. But I won't be able to do that exclusively or extensively. A couple of nice rhododendrons in there though. I collect rhododendrons. I've been working on that. I probably have, 30 some odd rhododendrons in the garden, mostly which I've collected for their foliage. I really appreciate rhododendrons with attractive foliage and a compact size. This side of the garden is very narrow. We're on the north side, and it's just like it's under 5 feet because the setback there is 5 feet. I try and can't cram a lot of garden in there, and one of the ways that I do that is with clematis. I've got some clematis growing up on that fence, but it's also a place where I can grow some of those shady treasures. So the really showy foliage right there, that is Podophyllum spotty dotty. She's always a showstopper and really fun to grow. Some of the rhododendrons are starting to bloom. That one is cherries and merlot, or wine and roses, one of the two. And won't be long before I have a lot of clematis in bloom. Love that, the pools of gold that some of the plants just kind of really light up the garden's floor. There's that carex, and then there's a chorus ogon also on the path. So I like to do those, create these pools of light with the golden foliage. You can kind of see it towards the end of the path there. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. And ferns, lots of ferns. My trilliums are finally kind of getting some stature on them. That one's been in the garden for a while, and this is a really good year for it. I grow a lot of heucheras, but I try to be pretty picky. That particular one that you just saw is the best one that I am growing. Its foliage is really just held up exceptionally well. That's Rhododendron Mackinoy. And we'll pan past there. It's Ebony Pearl, which is going to bloom pretty soon with really just magenta flowers that are really striking against that dark foliage. So that's a pretty fun one. Lots of little ground covers. Lots of bare ground still, but it's coming along. Oh, here, this is fun. This is an Erycema. I'll put the name up there for you, but just look at that flower. Is that just otherworldly? It's really fun. Another trillium. This is Trillium luteum, backed by a dicentra with golden foliage. A Jeffersonia. More ferns, ferns that are unfurling and ferns that are pretty far along. That's Ethereum Ghost with the silver foliage there. Probably noticed that I use containers in the garden. I've got these blue containers that are situated in the garden at various pivot points. And I'm playing with the color blue, both in those containers and in some of the furnishings. It's a Stewardia monadelpha with that cinnamon colored bark, which is fantastic. And again, you're going to start seeing those color connections. So you're going to see the blue kind of threading throughout the garden, and a lot of the golden yellows and some of the corals and the pinks. And this gives you an idea of what's happening above our heads and what's creating kind of the enclosure and the canopy. In this shot, we are coming from that dining area, and we're approaching the garden from the south side. So we're walking from the south and into this part of the garden, and to our right there is entry into the studio. But if I follow that path and I turn around the corner here, then I'm seeing another view of that seating area outside of the studio on the other side. Brunnera and Japanese forest grass there. That big glossy foliage there is another podophyllum. This is Podophyllum pleanthymmum. Recently we reworked this little section, and so it used to be different, and so I changed that out this spring. So a lot of those plantings right there are new, but it's a fun little color vignette that I'm playing with there. And this is that we're going in and we're going to take a look, go into that small seating area and kind of experience the garden from there. So one of the things that I really like is that I've developed a number of different rooms that really allow you to experience the garden in different ways. So in the back there's about 4 different places that we can sit and experience the garden. So there's here, or the dining patio, or up on the deck, or in that living area outside of the studio with the couch and whatnot. That's where, when we have groups in the garden, where we gather. I like this vignette coming up. That's a Carex sparkler and a rhododendron that is getting ready to burst into bloom. That smoke tree will be a feature a little later. It's just leafing out. That's a witch hazel right there. So in winter, it's Helena, and it's got orange blooms in winter. Just lots of small plants along the edges there. That's a Weigela in the middle. Again, that's a Stewardia. We've got the structure there that's going to be covered in vines and be full of flowers in a few months. Hostas are emerging, and there's one of the rhododendron. That one is Rhododendron Laramie. It's got really nice white ingumentum. That's Rhododendron pachysanthem. Mahonia soft caress. Lots of dwarf conifers for structure. and containers. These are tender succulents that I've brought out for the season. I do have to protect those over the winter. That Fatsia is Fatsia camouflage. It's a favorite. I just love that bold foliage. Loropetalum, and at its feet is a Japanese painted fern. We're going to pivot here around, and I think you're going to get a pretty good view of the, well, I guess of this conifer, but we're going to pan, and this is that. So we can look now down the south side of the garden. It's about 12 feet, 14 feet wide total. The south side garden has a mix of shade and sun as well. Along the front of the border, a lot of those plants that you'll see are in the shade of other plants, so it's shady, but many of the angles get a lot of sun. So it's really a mix of plants that need and want sun. Those are usually situated against the house, and then other plants along that front edge of the curved steel raised bed. Many of those are kind of woodland or shady treasures. But to the right, this is a pretty sunny spot there. So there will be a lot of color a little later in the season. Again, this is in April, so very early in the gardening season for Portland. So things will really start getting more flowers. You know, right now a lot of the color is coming from foliage. There are flowers, of course, but a lot of the interest is just interesting foliage textures and colors. This is a new rhododendron for me. I just love that color. And I love the color story that's going to unfold. This is recently planted little section, but you can see the color connections that are going to be coming into play there. I think it's going to be really, really nice if everything does well for me. I grow a lot of things on that fence, some of them evergreen. So I've used some evergreen shrubs that are kind of espaliered along that fence to create kind of an evergreen screen. So I've got a couple of camellias trained onto the fence, and that's an unusual pendulous boxwood that's kind of trained against the fence. So I've got clematis for color, some camellias for evergreen screening and structure, and just gardening up like that adds a lot of interest to us. When you have a narrow space, you know, it just is another plane that you can use. There's the view back. And now we've done a full circle of the back section of the garden.
Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this little walkabout as much as I did. And if you like this type of content, I would really appreciate it if you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that button for notifications. So I appreciate you. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.